Welcome to the Unicorn Millionaire Podcast, where we celebrate financial empowerment and pride all year long. I'm your host, Charly Stoever, a non-binary Latinx money coach who's traveled solo to over 34 countries while helping my first-gen LGBTQIA+ and BIPOC community invest in the stock market and themselves. From my journey as a formerly undocumented Mexican American to diving into the world of finance as a stockbroker, I've learned firsthand the importance of financial independence and how you can be anti-capitalist while investing. I said what I said. Through my podcast, I share empowering stories and drop gems on gems, from how to be a Roth IRA freak to buying your first home. I started this podcast because I didn't see anybody like me talking about how to take advantage of capitalism. Whether you're tuning in for financial wisdom, wellness tips, or just to hear about my travels, I keep it real, fabulous, and magical. Subscribe to the Unicorn Millionaire Podcast and leave me a 5-star review. We're here, we're queer, and we're building wealth juntos, juntas, y juntes. Let's get into it. Welcome, Sarah, to the Unicorn Millionaire Podcast. I'm so excited to have your queer self here today with me.
Yeah, I'm super pumped to be here. Yeah, just to catch up, like you said, hear the chisme, and also just to, talk about one of my favorite passion topics, which is relationship anarchy. So I am ready.
Yay! Before we dive in, can you introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, so my name's Sarah, and I use they, she pronouns. And I'm a therapist, a ketamine therapist, and also a relationship therapist for people who are queer, non-monogamous, neurodivergent, and or kinky, or my favorite, all of those four, or some amount of those. And I work with clients in Washington, Idaho, or Florida.
Wow, that's extreme. Or Florida, because y'all need the help.
Yeah, Florida needs a little extra. Honestly, like a lot of parts of Idaho also. So,
oh, yes.
Yeah.
And are you from the Pacific Northwest originally?
Yeah, I'm from Portland area.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Moses Lake, Washington, rural, eastern, cuckoo as fuck, conservative Washington. Have not been back in like 10 years almost now and have no business going back. I'm so happy that you're here and that you do what you do. And you're currently in Mexico, which is where we met. We met when I was living in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta, and then a friend of a friend, because the queer online space is fucking small. Everybody knows each other. And somebody was like, oh, you should meet Sarah in Puerto Escondido. So we met a few minutes after meeting each other. We sang to La Tortura together. And I was like, I can fuck with this white girl as a white Mexican.
Yeah. Oh God, I forgot about that. That was an amazing time. I love karaoke always.
Yeah, that's the vibe. It's like, it is what it is. I'll be Alejandro's hands. You can be Shakira. And then that was like the last time I saw you was a year and a half ago.
Yep. And then since that time I moved, but love Puerto Escondido. But yeah, I'm in Merida now, which is very fulfilling for me.
I love that you're loving life in Mexico and also supporting the emotional support person for all the people in the US going through everything we're going through right now.
Yeah. And I have said a few times to some of my friends that it would be so challenging for me to, as a queer person, as a non-monogamous person, being non-binary, all of these identities that I have, if I see clients all day and then also had to exist as a human in the United States right now, just because I hear how even in a very progressive place like Seattle, just how hard it is with everything that's happening. And when I used to live in Seattle, I don't know, 10 years ago, things still happened even back then. I remember one time I was walking in Capitol Hill and I was wearing just like a shirt that said Pride on it and got accosted by two men and, all sorts of homophobic slurs, transphobic slurs. And I just keep hearing that was like 10 years ago, like where the rainbow crosswalks are, like in the queerest part of one of the queerest cities. And it still happened. And I just know how much worse it is from talking to all my clients right now and all my friends and people that I care about that are in the United States. So I'm glad I can support from here so I can take care of myself and also then take care of others.
Yes, that's the vibe. Fill up your cup first, take care of yourself so you can take care of others. I mean, that's why I left for Europe for 3 months and Mexico for a total of 4 months. I just needed to get out for I did it for my mental health, to just be in a place where I knew Trump wasn't president. And what's interesting is that I actually felt quite lonely since I was on the road and I was like, well, I'm in Europe for 3 months, gotta
hit all the countries, the 9 countries, boom, 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 on to the next one. And I appreciated community. So then I came to Portland, and I've really been investing a lot in just building in-person community and seeing the same friends over and over again, which is a big deal for me as somebody who moves around a lot. Like, I'm here to
Mhm.
chill for a bit. Um, but since being back, I've dove in because when in Rome, I've dove into like the poly, kink, sapphic, queer community, which I'm realizing how vanilla I am, but I'm owning it. I'm calling myself the vanilla prince. I went to a sex party. It was like a daytime sex pool party where people were just like having sex right next to me. And I was doing crafts because I was like, I don't know y'all like that. And I'm demisexual. But obviously, part of me aspires to be like them and to be in these spaces out of curiosity. And it's opening me up to other ways of doing things since I'm around so many polyamorous people. Just being around other people who say words like, "Oh, my partners and my friends," or cuddle
Mhm.
parties, and I started having conversations around intimacy with my friends as I've realized that a lot of this, our love language is physical touch and words of affirmation. But because we're so type A, living in America where physical contact is shunned unless you are with like a one romantic monogamous person that you're fucking, then you can hold hands and cuddle with them.
Yeah.
It's led to interesting discussions around creating intimacy. And I still identify as monogamous because I've never had a healthy relationship with one person. So my brain cannot comprehend the possibility yet of having multiple healthy relationships with multiple people. I'm still just like, trying to show my brain and waiting 3 years later, being single and celibate almost 2 years to show my brain that a healthy romantic relationship is possible. But I feel like I've fixated less on that as I've realized other ways of deprioritizing your main partner and getting into relationship anarchy. And then I immediately thought of you because I've seen you talk about it before, but I was like, that sounds so violent. And you're like throwing grenades and blowing stuff up as an anarchist. You're really just blowing up the system with the
Yeah.
CIS.
Yeah.
So that's a lot, but that's currently what I'm getting into. And I'll also share that I'm about to be performing at, it's called Butch Drag Strip Night.
Oh my gosh, that's
And
amazing. I
it's
follow them
awesome.
on Instagram.
So, of course you do. This world is small. Okay. I'm going to be performing a duo with another non-binary person who I met that night a month ago. Like they were like, "Oh, I follow you on IG," and we talked and we tried out in front of everybody and just danced and everything.
Love
And
that.
my strip name's gonna be the Vanilla Prince because it is what it is. Maybe I'll change it
Yeah,
to
I
a
love that you're,
translation.
yeah, I love that
But
you're
I'm
owning
thinking
it.
about it. Yeah, I feel like I have like my vanilla friends, and then I have my super sexual kinky friends, and I'm like, okay, what about us in the middle? And I'm tired of it just being like, oh, vanilla is bad, or this is the right way. There's no one right way. So I'm
Mhm.
gonna start talking now because I'll turn this into a free therapy session. It's not. But
Love
I'm
everything
really
you're
happy
saying.
to have on that, or if you want to share your journey of, or what the fuck is relationship anarchy to
Yeah.
start with.
I have so many thoughts on everything you said. Let's see if I can organize them. But everything, like the first part, right, around this like idea of the relationship escalator came to mind, this idea in our society and in our world of there's a right way to exist as a human being. And usually you have to be cis, straight, white, you need to have 2.5 kids, you need to be married, you need to have a golden retriever, which I do have the golden retriever, but that's about the only thing I have that's within the norms at this point. And so it's like all these prescribed steps that you're supposed to take. And in my 20s, I did all of those prescribed steps. Like I really tried, right? I tried really hard. And
Mhm.
it's like it's not for everybody. It's not for most people, actually. And so what I love about relationship anarchy is it's intentionally choosing to step outside of those norms and also outside, yeah, of societal norms, outside of cultural conditioning, outside of what my family said I'm supposed to do or what I saw modeled for me in terms of what relationships are supposed to look like. Um, outside of it, or even like what my partners or my friends tell me that the relationship is supposed to look like, right? Instead, it's actually me digging deep as the unique human that I am, and I am very unique, right? And then with all the different types of relationships in my life, not just again like romantic, but like you said, not prioritizing automatically romantic relationships, but with my friendships and with and there's even a joke in the relationship anarchist community that it's even designing your relationship intentionally with the mailman, right? It's like literally with every
Mhm.
life. Like you get to
Mm.
actually step outside of what you're supposed to do and choose intentionally what actually feels right for me. What are my relationship values? What can I offer in this relationship? What feels really good for me? And also that what I love about it is it's flexible, right? Because oftentimes, even if maybe at one point in our life, let's say the relationship escalator or parts of that felt really good, because that's also totally fine for some people, it works. That's awesome. But then we change. We're fluid human beings, and so then fast forward 10 or 20 years, that no longer fits how I want to do relationships, or even 1 year or 6 months, because we're, always changing as human beings, being able to talk to those people that we're in relationship with and then sit down and say something like, I really value you in this relationship. I really love so many parts of this, feeling really good for me. How about you? Checking in. And then I also wanted to kind of revisit this one thing I know we had agreed on in our relationship, but that's actually not really feeling aligned for who I am in this chapter. And so can we talk, come up with something that feels better for us both? And so I just feel like it gives so much more freedom, is my initial thoughts.
And how did you start getting into it? Was it while you were in a relationship or you were single or trying things out with friends? Like, what was the spark for you?
So I had my first non-monogamy. So I guess, yeah, I'm going to go into that in a second, but also something else which segues into my story, but also what you shared, that you can be monogamous and be relationship anarchist. It's not inherently non-monogamous. And I think there's a misconception about that, but actually it's just, you would not be doing traditional monogamy in the way, right? It really takes conscious monogamy to do something like relationship anarchy. And so I mentioned that because I started my relationship, or my non-monogamous journey back in college for the first time. And that was, I don't know, 13, 14 years ago or something like that. And I did a really bad job at it. That was really bad. I've learned a lot over the years of practicing different types of relationships, trying monogamy, trying non-monogamy, I tried solo polyamory, I tried all sorts of different labels under the non-monogamy umbrella, and realize what really works for me. And part of that's even more important for me than my non-monogamy, because I do identify as polyamorous, but is my relationship anarchy. And for me, that's because it just encompasses all the types of relationships that I'm in. And that really started probably like 3.5 years ago, where I had heard of it and had, like I was like, oh, that resonates, but hadn't spent a lot of time intentionally looking at what it means. And I was in relationship with two people at that time. And even though we said we were non-hierarchical, like first I have a lot of thoughts on hierarchy too. That's like but impossible to really do, because there is going to be some types of hierarchy involved if you live with someone, have kids or finances, etc. But with one partner, I really thought that I was non-hierarchical, but then actually examining it and looking back on it now, it was very clearly very hierarchical. And there was a lot of norms that we were still operating within, even being in a queer relationship, that we were still following some of the typical like gender norms, because they were more masc and I was more femme at that time. And I just and then I did van life for a year, and that's probably a big part of it. I did van life for a year, was on my own, did a lot of solo exploration, did some mushroom trips, that kind of thing. And then I just kind of
Yeah.
realized that way of relating wasn't working for me. That I think my neurospicy brain really needs to like communicate actively about it with people that I'm in a relationship with. I'm a little overboard, and I created a 6-page document that is my own relationship manifesto, which encompasses how I do relationships. And
Wow.
I'm going to have like a really close relationship with somebody, friends, lovers, partners. I ask if they would be willing to read that. And it's probably a good sign for me that we're not compatible if they're not willing to read it, because it's me putting my heart into
Yeah.
these are
It's
my
intentionality.
yeah. And so in that time I started working on that. Basically, I started like, I read the short instructional manifesto for Relationship Anarchy by Andy Nordgren. Like, I think, they're one of the kind of pioneers of this term relationship anarchy, not the concept, because that's been around in indigenous cultures and for a long time, but that term came about in 2006. And so I read that, I was like, I need to create my own relationship manifesto. And so that's basically what I did. And then I started having conversations with my two then partners, and then also some new people that were coming into my life. And for me, I had that clarity and it felt so aligned and it made sense, but it was really challenging to make that switch for each of them. And for a bunch of reasons, basically, we ended up breaking up. And then from then on, anybody new in my life, it's just been like, I talk about it right away from the beginning. And yeah. So that's my long story short.
What's in them? Are you willing to share what's in the manifesto? I'm so curious. Is there like a list of what you're looking for, non-negotiables, or what's in it?
Yeah. I wish I had pulled it up, but basically it includes things like, here's my most important relationship values. For example, I like to communicate about things. It's important to me what types of communication and what types of communication really don't work from the unique human that I am, and also being trauma informed. For example, someone yelling at me and calling me names does not work for me. And so like that kind of stuff is in there of how I, hope to be communicated with. And then also a lot of the relationship anarchy principles are in there. For example, some stuff around like my personal autonomy, and also that I really value the autonomy of the people that I'm in relationships with. Like I would, even if I'm having feelings about it, which is totally normal human experience, if I'm feeling jealous, feeling uneasy, whatever I'm feeling, uncomfortable because my partner, has a really deep new friendship, or they're starting to cuddle and I'm wondering what that means, or they have a new partner. Those, like, I'm gonna have human emotions about it, but I would never tell one of my partners or one of my friends, like, I think that you should not be in a relationship with that person, or that I think that you should do it differently than you are. That's not my place. And I just really value that every one of the people in my life get to make those choices for themselves, and that they also honor that for me. And some people have, there's relationship anarchy has this idea of, oh, because it's all about autonomy, that means it's selfish and you don't care about anybody else. But actually, it's the opposite of that, because we balance this autonomy with this, community care. It's just intentionally designed with the people actually in it. So me and one of my partners, we have a whole 3-page document of our relationship agreements, right? And it's like we've sat intentionally. We've used this really cool tool called the Relationship Anarchy Smorgasbord, and it's basically this like menu of relationship options that you can sit down.
Oh yeah, I've seen it, but I got too overwhelmed. I was like, cool, I'll look at this later.
I love it. I mean, yes, it is like relating like this does take more work for sure, because it's so much easier in some ways to just go with whatever the status quo of relating is. Like, it's easier in some ways, but then it ends up being harder on the other side if that's not aligned. Like it's going to come out in your body, or it's going to come out, in other ways. And so it is more work up front, a lot more communication, a lot more intentionality. And I forgot the original question that got us here. So.
I'm like, how you got into it. So you answered it perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
okay. Also,
yeah. And I think I'm really glad that I'm exploring this, even though I am monogamous. Like you say, you can be monogamous and explore it, but that kind of makes you non-monogamous in the traditional way of like, you're only supposed to have physical contact, at least in the US. I mean, Mexico's people are a lot more warmer physically. When you saludar, when you say hi to somebody in Mexico, you kiss that person on the cheek, even though you never met them. Americans could never.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
unless you're in Miami. I lived there for a while, and that was very common over there.
Yeah, into that. But a lot of Americans are not, because that's the culture. It's not on them, but that's how they've been socialized. And it's this individualistic, like white Anglo-Saxon, I don't know, structuring of you can only kiss like your wife and your one person. You can cheat on them, but keep everything a secret. And in that way, it's like more selfish, but doesn't allow for exploration. And I've also been interested in it because as somebody who is trans, I am estranged from family, which is statistically way more common for queer people to be estranged from family. And when I am in relationships, I've noticed that when they end, I'm absolutely devastated, because I follow the narrative of this person is your life, your support person, your everything. And then when they're gone, I'm devastated. And I don't have like like some of my exes have had their family to help them process with or move back in with. I have none of that. And I don't want to depend on one person or rely on one person ever again for them to be my everything, which is why I'm like, instead of just chasing the idea of this one person that's going to be my everything, let me just turn around and focus on the people who have been there for me and in my life, and have intentional conversations with them.
Yeah. I mean, I love that. And it's such a common thing, I think, what you just shared, that happens so often in our society too, and maybe even part of that relationship escalator, right? We meet somebody, start dating them, we fall in love, we start taking these steps, and then like you said, it just becomes, I think we have a very codependent way of relating in a lot of ways. They become our everything. We have this expectation they're supposed to meet all of our needs in every type of way, instead of actually honoring the unique individuals that are in that relationship with each other, which can look there's so much diversity in humanity. And then like you said, also what I've seen happen with a lot of even clients that I work with are people that they get really involved in that relationship, and then a breakup happens, but they forgot to like still invest in their friendships that they had prior to that relationship. Now they all of a sudden are like, oh, I want to connect back again because I broke up, and then there's that breach of trust, because okay, but like for the last 2 years you were dating somebody, I just didn't matter to you, versus actually even no matter what types of relationships we're in, we're still investing in each of those and the unique ways that each of those relationships need.
Yeah, I mean, RA, Relationship Anarchy, that's the abbreviation I've learned. RA is interesting to me, and I feel like it is becoming a non-negotiable as I learn about it. And I don't want it to be a oh, this is something I'm gonna do in between finding a partner, which I feel like a lot of people might fall into that trap. Oh, let me just cuddle with my friend until I meet that person. And it's like, no, this is gonna be something that I want to do even when I'm in a relationship, which, like I say, I'm glad I'm doing this shit now as I'm single because I don't want to date somebody who gets mad if I'm cuddling or holding hands with my friend, which has happened to me in the past. In college, this would happen. I would have platonic spooning time with one of my good friends, even though before I knew it was RA or anything, it wasn't never sexual at
Mhm.
all, but we'd have lovely spooning time because I trusted her in a different way. And then my ex would get mad, and then I'd feel like I was cheating on her. And now I'm like, oh, that's the one thing that I didn't recognize was RA. That was important to me. And now I'm like, okay, yeah, but it's important to have that conversation up front. If you are dating or meeting some people, being like, this is something that's important to me. I would be like, I am monogamous. I don't feel like I need to have sex with a lot of people. I haven't had sex with one person almost 2 years because I know I fuck myself, and I need to like really build trust with somebody. And I'm sober as well. I've realized that I've become sober for chronic health reasons. I used to like drink a beer a day, 2 beers a day. I was never a heavy drinker. I've always been a lightweight, but I stopped because of my chronic health issues. So I'll have one fancy cocktail a month. And I've really noticed how demisexual I am and how most of my relationships have gone from 0 to 100 because of alcohol, because I use it as a crutch. So a lot of
Mhm.
people have done that. So I also feel like my sobriety and agingness at 35, I'm a lot more selective and picky now.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because I'm also actually exploring sobriety this year. I'm 9 months, 8 months, something like that, into not drinking.
Mhm.
California sober, I should say. Um,
Hey.
and that's been, I thought I was, I mean, I still, have all of these really beautiful sexual parts to me. I don't know if I'm quite demisexual, but I don't know if it's part of that, but also trauma history. And I've been in enough relationship experiences at this point to know what are the red flags for me personally as a unique human I am. And yeah, alcohol did mask some of that before, and I could be, like, oh yeah, for sure, I don't know you, but let's make out right now.
Hmm.
Or, other things, and that just doesn't, then I end up usually, then I have these unspoken expectations, I guess, about what that's supposed to mean. And then, and it just leads to problems down the road. And so I really love that. Yeah, it's been challenging me to also be sober this year and be relating with others and see what that really
Hmm.
is. And I found like even deeper connections in that way. I don't know about you. I'm curious what your experience has been like with that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like your vibe attracts your tribe. Now that I'm sober, I'm attracted more to people who also don't feel like they need to drink, or I'm helping other people question why they drink so much. I went out to dinner with one of my good friends who loves to have her mezcalitas. She's my Mexican friend. We have a good old time and everything, but she knows that I've started this thing where I'm like, I will just drink a fancy cocktail with you because it's a vibe with you. One cocktail a month, that's my quota. And the last time we went out to dinner, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have a drink now. And then she was like, but I was gonna have an Arnold Palmer because I know you don't drink. I'm like, the fuck you are. I didn't pressure her, obviously, but I was like, I'm gonna get my watermelon daisy drink at Screen Door in Portland here. It's Southern food. And then she ended up getting a cocktail too. But I've also noticed that talking about my sobriety helps other people question like if they're using alcohol to mask or regulate
Mhm.
themselves as well. And yeah, it's like a spectrum. I have friends who are completely been sober for like 8 years now. And
Mhm.
so those are the people that are like, wow, that's a lot to not feel like you have to mask. And I'm just upfront. I'm neurospicy as well. I'm a very literal person as I'm on the spectrum, and I don't have time to play games or mask
Mhm.
anymore as I've been unmasking. So I feel like sobriety helps find my people and have
Yeah.
these intentional conversations instead of just like, oh, I was drunk, I forgot about that. I don't have time for that.
Mhm. Yeah. And I feel like there's also so many overlaps even with relationship anarchy with what you just shared of this. Even like when I think about relationship anarchy, I think about, of course, all the different people I'm in relationships with of different types, but also my dogs. I love them and I have very unique relationships with each of them. But then also like substances, and I'm designing intentionally my relationship with various substances from psychedelics to alcohol, and like what actually do I need with those relationships, and that can also change over time. But for example, like I said with alcohol, I'm like this year I don't want to be in a relationship in the same way I was. I'm gonna be abstinent from alcohol and see, keep reassessing. But I also think you can have a relationship anarchist perspective on like how I spend my money, which I think would be right. What hobbies do
Mhm.
I do? How do I spend my time? And just like actually just being really intentional to design all of those things. That's for me what relationship anarchy also encompasses.
Yes. And we are a personal finance podcast, but we talk about mushrooms and psychedelics. I've talked about my mushroom trips in Spanish on this podcast before. So this also ties into how relationships affect your relationship with money. And I personally see everything I do as an investment. I've realized that your partners can be the most important investment you make, not just the money you put in your Roth IRA every January. So I feel like this theme ties perfectly into other ways, other alternatives of doing things. Because so many people who listen to this podcast are queer, are neurodivergent. They're making that money. They want to just know that they're doing the right thing with their money, but it doesn't stop there. That investing in the stock market is like the necessary gateway drug we need so that we can feel financially secure and then have more time to explore these things. I feel like if I weren't a full-time business owner for 5 years now with my own retirement accounts on lock, I wouldn't have the capacity to dive into RA. All of these things take effort, but now I'm like, okay, what other ways can I invest in myself other than money?
I love that. And I also was thinking ahead of time, so I was like, interesting, what are we going to talk about with relationship anarchy on this podcast? Is it going to be some financial components and trying to like think about intentionally? And just was thinking about how going back to that relationship escalator, but also there's like an escalator of how we're supposed to manage our money, I feel like in this world, right? And even tied to how we do relationships. And, we go through this process with somebody, we date them, we decide to get married to them. Now we're entangling our finances. It's technically supposed to look one way, right? In the ideal narrative. But actually, relationship anarchy can allow you to step outside of that. And again, it's just designing intentionally what you want that relationship with money to look like. And then also with others. Like it doesn't have to only be, sharing resources in a dyadic couple, right? It can also be like mutual aid and other things that I think us queers are also like already thinking about anyways. And so I think it ties really well into just intentionally designing and with who we're intentionally designing. And do we support our friends financially? Do we, if the moment is necessary or vice versa, or I don't know, just made me think about that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, within the queer community, there is a lot of shame and stigma around investing in the stock market because we do care about each other and mutual aid, and all of us can feel the impending doom as sensitive people, global warming. And but it makes me sad when I see so many people be like, I just don't believe in investing. What's the point? We're all going to die anyway. And my long-term thinking ass is just like, well, I'm estranged from family. I don't have anybody to depend on. I can't just like move in with my family or with a partner as a single person. So that's why I'm like, I have to take care of myself. But I also think of the long-term impacts. Yeah, we don't have a choice. There's nothing ethical about investing. But one day when I have enough, I will sell out of everything and then turn around and invest it in the form of mutual aid. It'll feel a lot different to be able to donate 50K rather than $5 because I'm struggling and that's all I can give.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
So many thoughts.
So many. Where do you want to go next?
I think I'm just curious about like, yeah, how your relationships work. Because I feel like when I talk with a lot of cishet people, they're just like, what's the difference between an open relationship and polyamory? So I think it would be helpful to just break down like, what is the difference?
Yeah. Also, I think of like any relationship, monogamy, non-monogamy, any type of friendship, whatever, right? It's again, this from a relationship anarchist perspective, we're designing it intentionally. So people who are monogamous, they've decided, right? I want the things that I value in a relationship is exclusivity, and this is what that means for me. Maybe it's sexual exclusivity, these specific sex acts, maybe it's physical exclusivity or this type of physical, right? Cuddling is okay, but hand holding, no, I feel weird. That's more romantic. Or maybe like kissing on the mouth feels, it's like actually getting super clear about what is.
Or like holding hands, like with your fingers interlocked or not.
Yeah, like it sounds silly, but I actually encourage people to like really think through because otherwise, what do? We operate on assumptions, and then all of a sudden I have hurt feelings because someone that I'm in relationship with did something that I didn't like, and I had never voiced that to them. But then we still end up being like, oh, well, now I'm mad at you because you should have just known. And for me, it's like, no, for my neurospicy brain, that doesn't work. We need to actually like get clear on what are all the specifics so we know what are the agreements that we're operating within. And same under the non-monogamy umbrella. There's so many different labels. I think labels are great as long as they're great for you, but we don't need the labels. But they're helpful for like communicating about the same kinds of, I guess, topics. And so in the non-monogamy umbrella, I like to think of a spectrum from, yeah, like you said, there's open relationships, They're all different depending on the unique humans in them, but a lot of time people who identify as in an open relationship, or when I myself was in an open relationship, it's like, oh, it's fine, we can have sex with other people, maybe in this specific way. Like let's say there's a zip code rule and you're out, on a work trip or something, like, yeah, go have sex with somebody else, but like when you're here in the same town, we don't do that, and maybe I don't want to hear about it, or maybe I want to hear everything about it, depending on what our boundaries are. But it's usually more sexual and like there's more emotional exclusivity. And then there's also like swinging relationships. That's also kind of part of the open relationship umbrella, but also doesn't have to be. And there can be overlap with all of these identities. You can be a swinger and be polyamorous, for example, but it's not necessarily the same thing. So that's typically a couple that maybe goes to play parties together, and either they, play separately or together. Maybe they have group sex experiences only. Yeah, so it's also gonna be called the lifestyle. That's swingers. And then we move into polyamory, and then there's just so many labels under polyamory, from don't ask, don't tell, right? Which is basically, if I was in that type of relationship, we know that we are non-monogamous. We know we're polyamorous. It's totally cool. You can have whatever other relationships you want, but I don't want to hear anything about them. So I don't want to know if you're going on a date with somebody else. I don't want to know if you just had sex with somebody else. We just agree, let's say, on these sexual health best practices. And so like we know what we're doing, but I just don't want to hear about it. So it's like, don't ask, don't tell. And then we move further. There can be parallel polyamory, which is maybe me and my partner who practice that way. Let's say we both are in separate relationships, but there's not a lot of intermingling. Like I know maybe the name of the person you're dating. I know you're going on a date with that person, but I'm not like going and hanging out with that person with you, right? It's more we're on parallel tracks with each other, and I understand a bit more than don't ask, don't tell, but I'm not like involved heavily. And then we have like when there's more involvement, there can be kitchen table. Polyamory is another common one. And that's basically, I know who my metamors are, and metamors are my partner's partners. And that's basically the idea is we can get around a kitchen table and it would not be awkward. We can play board games, we can have, fun times together. I know them. It's basically all of us can design intentionally those relationships with each other, and we're comfortable like hanging out with each other. It's not weird for me to see my partner kiss my, their other partner or things like that. And then there's garden party polyamory, which is a fun one too. And that's basically, it's a little bit less involved than kitchen table. And that's basically imagining, it can also be called birthday party polyamory. Let's say I was practicing that way. I have a birthday. I want to invite my two partners who aren't in relationship with each other in any way, but they both can come and be there and be social and hang out with each other in that space, but they don't really have any relationship outside of it. Usually like we can be cordial together, but we're not like seeking each other out to be besties. There's a bunch more, but those are kind of like some of the main ones. Yeah.
I love that. It's so, I think the main theme is it's tailored to you. You can have a label and then totally fuck it up if you're not communicating about what cheating would look like to you. Because even just like you're saying, cuddling can feel like cheating to somebody. So it's important to communicate. I think a lot of people have this idea that polyamory is just like a constant orgy, when really it's constant communication.
Yeah, it's like the joke is that it's communication and scheduling. That's really happens way more than any sex, honestly. Yeah. And I think you asked also, what do my relationships look like? Is that right? Yeah. And so at this point, in this moment, right, because again, everything's always in flux and changing, but I have two partners now. One of them is my nesting partner who you also met. Hello.
Yes.
And so we met in Puerto Escondido, and then we moved here together to Merida. We've been together 2.5 years now. And yeah, so that's low. And then we actually met somebody together earlier this year in Merida, some group gatherings, that kind of thing. Her name's Dani. And there was, that like flirtatious vibe happening with both of us. And we're like, honestly, we had never dated anybody else together before. I've had one other triad before this experience, which did not go well for me in the past. And so there was like, we were a little bit nervous, but also excited, because there was definitely, you can feel the vibe. It's happening all around. Like, okay. We had her over for dinner one time, and then the vibe was like, oh no, the vibe does exist. And have been exploring that. And in June, we asked her to be our girlfriend. And so now we are officially a triad. And it's very unique because also I think people have these different ideas of what a triad has to look like. And we are also in this process, ever evolving, of what do we want our unique relationship to look like, which is actually 4 relationships, because there's me and Lo and Dani and me, and also all 3 of us. So that's a lot of relationships to manage. And so, like, for example, me and Lo live together, and Dani lives about 40 minutes from us and comes over usually on the weekends, right? And so we're kind of designing intentionally what feels really good, also with how busy we all are with, living in a capitalistic world. But that also means like in the future, we're not closed to, depending on how things go, different arrangements. Like eventually we could all be living together depending on how things happen. But right now in this moment, it feels really good to be kind of exploring where we are, and they're both amazing.
I love that. That's so sweet. I appreciate you for being so open and transparent to just sharing what you're going through and being honest about how this shit has not worked out in the past and it's probably working out better because you've realized how much intentionality all this
Mhm.
takes, right? That people
Yeah.
don't just magically like break in through the window and become the love of your life. It requires so much intentionality,
Yeah.
and that's what makes these relationships work. And just being open and to the idea that people do change, which I think a lot of people in this society, especially cishet people, they have this idea that your partner is going to be your one person forever and it'll be fixed and no one will change. But I think, especially for your relationships, we're just open to the idea that things might not work out forever. But I think
Yeah.
queers are better at staying friends. I'm personally not, because of all my toxic relationships, because I rush into things. And now I'm like, I actually want to be friends with the person that I am romantic with first. And the sobriety, of course, is helping me take more time. So I'm not really friends with any of my exes, but now I feel like it is something that would be important to me, because for all the reasons, and community is more important now than ever. So I just really appreciate you sharing what this is like for
Yeah.
you.
And it's interesting because even that you mentioned that it's, yeah, I have a history of taking some not great relationships in my past also, but my most recent ex, she's great also, from Puerto Escondido, and we dated for, I don't know exactly how long, maybe 6 months or something like that. And, still have a lot of love for her and care about her. And now we're right now in this moment, we are in this process of redesigning our friendship and what we actually want that to look like. And they're going to be talking pretty soon about like, what kind of boundaries do we want to have? We're also long distance, but if we happen to see
Mhm.
each other, I want to bring up questions like, what if we kiss? Is that okay? Do I want
Mhm.
that also? What if we cuddle? Or is this like, can I
Mhm.
handle that in that specific relationship because I was in love with her, right? So it's kind of like
Yeah.
exploring that first for myself and then also having those conversations even after breakups. We can go through different relationship transitions, and it makes me see time differently also because right
Mhm.
now this is what it looks like, and this, we're intentionally designing it to look different in our next chapter. But I have no idea for any of my relationships where they're going to be in 10 years. Like there's some ideas and hopes and dreams of where I want them to be. And, we have conversations about that. And also one of the things that I really love about Relationship Anarchy and that both of my romantic partners are also relationship anarchists, which I'm realizing is a hard line for me also at this point. Um,
Yeah.
it's allowed us to have real hard conversations about what happens if we decide that we don't want to be romantic with each other anymore in the future, or we don't want to have specific types of sex with each other anymore. Like right now, that feels great, but what if that changes? And actually, like, if it does, like, we are committed to, unless there's any, which I just don't envision happening with people I'm in a relationship at this point, like abuse or anything like that. I don't envision that ever happening. So I really want to
Mhm.
keep it in my life forever, and it just might change in what forms. Do you know what I mean? And I love that there's
Yeah.
flexibility built in that we might just be friends in the future, or maybe we're going to be lovers forever. That's ideal, right? But it can also be
Mhm.
possible. So,
Yeah. We all just want to live in a commune together.
yes, that's so common in the non-monogamy community and the queer community. Like, I would love who's doing that. I want to be involved.
I might be teaching in Portland a class on how to financially prepare for a commune. So stay tuned.
Let me know if you do and if it's going to be virtual because I'm very curious.
Live stream.
That's amazing.
Yes, well, this was so good. I feel like we could keep talking about this forever, but for the sake of time, I will let you go soon. Before we do, is there anything else you want to share with folks? Where can folks find you? All that good, juicy stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think first, a couple helpful resources if people that are listening to this want to dive into the world of relationship anarchy. Of course, there is my blog, and I am writing about, I even have a blog article coming out today or tomorrow on how you can be
Mm.
monogamous and relationship anarchist. And so that's courageousoutherapy.com/blog. But then also there's books. One of my favorites is called Expansive Love by Tuck Malloy, and they're a non-binary queer person who wrote this. It's really great. It's an awesome book. It's my favorite one on relationship anarchy so far.
Mhm.
And then also the short instructional manifesto for relationship anarchy. If you just Google that, you'll be able to find that. So those are some tools for people who want to kind of dive into what more of like what this means and what we're talking about. And then yeah, if they want to find me, I did start a TikTok, which has
Hey.
been nerve-wracking, and I'm working up more courage to like do more talking videos and that kind of things. But
Mm.
so that's at Sarah Wolfer. And then yeah, like I said, my website's courageousoutherapy.com. I'm also I just started and launched a free newsletter on non-monogamy topics. It's going to come out, the first one in October. So if anyone wants to sign up, you can also go to courageousyouTherapy.com and sign up there.
Yay. Thank you. I'll put the link in the show notes for all this good stuff. So yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for your transparency. We're all about the transparency out here. Hey, see what I did there? Okay.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing. I love talking about relationship anarchy. So anytime you want to talk about it, let me know.
Okay. How about it tomorrow? So good. Thank you for being on, Sarah. Have a good day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you so much for listening and dropping into today's episode. If you want to connect with me and work one-on-one on your money goals, I invite you to book a call to learn more about how I can help you with my money coaching program. I work with folks one-on-one long-term so that you can twerk your way to early retirement. I also want to invite you, if you haven't yet, to join my Unicorn Millionaire newsletter. I love dropping money gems through my newsletter right to your inbox, and I share my latest updates and invites to my free personal finance classes. What is better than that? I'm getting them from an MB who is queer and can't stop, won't stop talking about that Roth IRA freak life. So get that juicy goodness at the link in the show notes, and don't forget to visit my blog, unicornmillionaire.com, and come twerk along with me on Instagram at Traveler Charly. That's Traveler Charly with a Y, because that's how they spell it down in Mexico. The information contained in the Unicorn Millionaire podcast is provided for general informational use only. Your purchase, download, and use of this material does not constitute a client relationship. The views expressed by the Unicorn Millionaire podcast hosts and guests are not intended to constitute accountant, legal, tax, certified financial planner, stock advisor, or other professional advice. Users of this podcast material should not act upon this information. Users of this podcast material should do their own due diligence by independently verifying all information, products, and services mentioned with their own qualified professionals before making any decisions. We assume no responsibility for information contained in the Unicorn Millionaire podcast and disclaim all liability with respect to errors, inaccuracies, omissions, misleading, or defamatory statements. Users of this podcast accept and understand the terms of the disclaimer.